Hello everyone, welcome to the newest installation of I Totally Know What I'm Doing. In this video, I'll dive into the art style and how I'm crafting the visual identity of the game. When I started working on art style, I knew I wanted something that felt retro but still had its own unique flavor. Retro style lets you spend less on creating assets, and in return, you spend more time thinking about how to squeeze a human face into 42 pixels. I decided to go for a PSX-inspired aesthetic, which means embracing some strict limitations. For character arms and weapons, I'm keeping the poly count around 1000 polygons per model, since they take up significant portion of the screen during gameplay. Enemies are getting from 500 up to 1000 polygons. The rest of the models are kept simple, using primitives like boxes and cylinders wherever possible. You can get away with a lot by texturing primitives correctly. Textures are another big part of retro look. I'm using 256 by 256 textures for arms, enemies and weapons, while large environment objects get 128 by 128 textures. For small objects and tiling textures, I drop down to 64 by 64. Environments use 256 by 256 texture atlases with 64 by 64 textures inside. I am also limiting the color palette to keep things cohesive. I use lobsec.com to pick palettes, usually 16 colors for environments and 8 to 16 colors for objects with a single hue. If something needs more detail, I'll bump it up to 24 to 32 colors, but I try to avoid going overboard. Applying a good palette is a hack that makes any retro texture look better. I personally do it in GIMP. Go to Image, Mode, Indexed and choose your preferred palette. I found that moving to a more stylized approach not only made things look better, but also made it easier to keep everything consistent. It's been a huge improvement for overall style of the game. My workflow starts in Blender, where I, or my 3D guy, model assets. I usually like to use as much base meshes as possible. For example, 90% of humanoids in Abyss Lurker are made from humanoid base mesh from itch.io. I try to edit proportions based on character type, add some loops or geometry to represent clothing, and maybe add separate meshes for accessories. Once the model is ready, I move on to texturing. For more complex textures, I use Substance Painter with Pixelizer plugin, which helps me achieve that pixelated look using PBR techniques. It's not a guide per se, but usually what I do is bake curvature map from the mesh, switch to base color, fill half shadow color, add light tone color with curvature mask, hand paint any details I want, apply bake light and stylized material, apply Pixelizer plugin with needed dimensions, generate color palette of 24 to 28 colors. For simpler textures, I switch to Aseprite using Blender Prima Base add-on. In Godot, the setup is pretty straightforward. I set texture filtering to nearest, specular to 0, roughness to 1, and that gives me the look I like. One thing to note is I'm not using unshaded in my shaders. While it would be more true to the PS1 era, I still want dynamic light in my game. I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere and makes the visuals pop. That said, I originally wanted to use per vertex lighting, which is more true to the PS1 style. Unfortunately, it's not yet implemented in Godot 4, and even if they implement it in Godot 4.4, I'm not switching. I should say there is one use for unshaded parameter, is when you're trying to create effects like fire, lightning, magic, etc. For example, I use it on my Portal shader. Atmosphere is a huge part of the game, and I'm relying heavily on fog and sky to set the mood for each level. For level 1 I went with a teal fog to create a mysterious vibe. I wanted to limit player long distance vision, but still reveal sky a bit. Our levels are still in production, but I'm experimenting with different color palettes and fog settings to give each one a unique feel. Level 3 is almost done and it sure is getting yellow dusty fog. I've added pixelation setting for the game. It works by applying full rect shader that is calculated based on global shader parameter of pixel size. It just averages n pixels together based on current screen texture size. I will add code for it in the description so you can try it out. Sound design is also crucial for game feel, but I'm not yet ready to present you with my great discoveries. All I did for the first level is adding some ambient sounds. Working within these limitations has been challenging, but it also has been a good learning experience. I'm more used to working with high poly sculpting and rendering still images, so making low poly game assets is kinda new to me. It's still much easier when trying to create high poly assets with 10 different texture maps, especially when you get used to it. I'd say I spent around 1 hour to create props and 2 to 3 hours to create characters. I assure you I did not spend last 2 months doing nothing new for the game. I kinda did, but I can't admit it. And that's it for this devlog. I look forward to telling you all about my productivity issues next time, and also showing off all cool stuff we made for the game when I started grinding again. Thank you for your time, Roach out.